who've just joined us online. We are reconvening after a short break the January main meeting of Cabinet, and the next report that we will consider is a report of Corporate Director of Social Services and Wellbeing on play sufficiency duty and our assessment and action plan to secure sufficient play opportunities in the County Borough. So over to you, please, Claire.
Thank you very much, Leader. And I'm accompanied this afternoon by Andrew Thomas, who's the Group Manager for Prevention and Wellbeing. And Andrew will take you through some of the detailed analysis within the assessment and the action plan. So I'll just provide some brief introductory remarks, if I may. So I'm really pleased to introduce this report this afternoon, which sets out how Bridgend County Borough Council will meet our sufficiency duty. We've undertaken the play sufficiency assessment, and there's an action plan which is attached as well. As the report sets out, play sufficiency is a statutory duty on local authorities, and we are required to secure, not directly provide, all of it, a sufficient quality and quantity of play opportunities for children and young people in accordance with Article 31 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, and also in accordance with Welsh Government statutory guidance. I'm pleased to advise Cabinet that the assessment and action plan were the subject of detailed pre-scrutiny consideration prior to Cabinet this afternoon, and Andrew can provide some update on the recommendations for scrutiny in his presentation of the detail within the report. I'd also draw Cabinet attention to the wide definition of play, and it's far wider than the definition of playgrounds, which are an important element and really important for our younger children to enjoy. But the assessment and action plan are really rich due to the extensive engagement involvement of young people in its development, and it's particularly stark, I think, as children and young people have reflected their experience of play during the pandemic and the extended lockdown. And there are some important messages in here on the impact on their physical and emotional health and well-being of that period, and that informs the priorities within the action plan. Finally, from me as the lead corporate director, for me, this report is really clear. The assessment is really clear that this is a one council approach to play sufficiency, and indeed a one Bridgend commitment, and the commitment of partners as well as the whole council is really critical in delivering the priorities within the action plan. I think the genuinely cross-cutting agenda was very evident in the scrutiny meeting, where 3 cabinet members were in attendance alongside senior officers, all very much contributing to those priorities. And you'll notice in 4.6J of the report the development of a play sufficiency leadership group, which would be chaired by the cabinet member for wellbeing of future generations, and that will be key in terms of progressing the priorities within the report sustainably and at the requisite pace. So that's it from me in terms of introductory remarks. I'll hand over to Andrew to highlight some of the detail. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Claire, and a very warm welcome to the Group Manager for Prevention and Wellbeing. Over to you, please, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Leader. I think the duty on local authorities has been in place since 2014, and would like to highlight that the duty asks you to consider both the quantity and the quality of opportunities, and that's quite a tricky thing to balance. Having high quantity doesn't always mean high quality, so it challenges us to think about appropriate provision by working with our local population. Purpose of the report is to seek observations, but ultimately the approval of the 3-year assessment and the proposed action plan, which is a requirement of Welsh Government. The regulations were published in 2012, and since then we've been involved in producing. This is our 4th cycle of assessment and action plan, and I think it's a long-term objective, and you see continuous improvement, but also challenge, I think, as time goes by. As Claire mentions, the definition and the scope of play may be far broader than members may appreciate, and it would include all kinds of recreation, school-based activity, youth provision, events, freely chosen play and holiday activities, but also the broadest range of places and spaces. And just to highlight, the play sufficiency duty as it's presented applies to children and young people up to the age of 17 years, whereas often I guess people would see this as an earlier years area of focus. As Claire mentions, the duty on local authorities is not necessarily to deliver, but to secure, and that requires us to work collaboratively with a broad range of partners. And I guess the word of the day is co-production, and it applies very much so to the place efficiency agenda in how we work with people and communities to develop or deliver what is most appropriate. There is a challenge of including the findings of the place efficiency assessment or assessments on a regional basis with the population needs assessment, the subsequent wellbeing plans and the role of public service boards. Place efficiency looks at a whole range of issues. It asks us to understand our population, different ages, different demographics, where people live. There's a specific focus on providing for children and young people with diverse needs. I'll explain a little bit more about that shortly. It also recognises that having space available for children to play is important, and there's those three ingredients really that within the legislation, the children and young people have the time, they have the space, and through the way that we work and endorse things, they have the necessary permissions to actually make positive use of space. Supervised provision is in there for a broad range of settings, and sometimes this includes the childcare in early years, but also into broader community opportunities. There's a focus on structured recreational activities, including leisure and culture. And then there's a focus on access to space and provision, including how we market and promote and engage. And there's a recognition that having a very confident and competent workforce, whether it's through third sector, whether it's through volunteers or through employment-based, is a key ingredient for the longer development of place efficiency. I think the one that is most relevant for me is, and it links with that One Council agenda and links probably with all scrutiny agendas, is that play is recognised within all relevant policy and implementation goals. And it is a cross-cutting challenge, I think, for most considerations. So in terms of the responsibilities that the Council has, our duty, the headline is to secure sufficient play opportunities, to work with others to publish relevant information about play opportunities, to have regard to children and young people with diverse needs. And whilst there's children with additional needs and disabilities in there, there are also young carers, Welsh language, residents in rural communities, and more to consider also. And I think there's a focus here to commit to work within and across the Council with partner organisations, children, families and communities also. There's a challenge to monitor place efficiency and to review how progress is being made. And as Claire suggests, the need for a leadership group and aligning to Welsh Government recommendations of a model approach is on the to-do list and the proposals for the way forward. And then ensuring children can participate in terms of citizen engagement and have voice and choice in terms of opportunities. Going forward, listening to the MTFS challenge, reviewing budgets, pooling resources, working with communities, working cross-sector to maximise benefit, and also ultimately creating this annual play action plan. There is a section in the report on the negative impact of the pandemic and the national restrictions, and our more recent engagement, certainly with secondary school age children, have identified some 30 to 40% having some negative legacy from that period in terms of physical and emotional well-being and probably confidence to re-engage within community opportunities. I think many of the places and spaces that would have traditionally been used, those that have reopened, are in a process of rebuilding steadily, some facing some very specific challenges now linked to cost of living. And I think for a lot of young people, there were extended periods where traditional face-to-face activity, friendship groups will have been replaced by digital engagement and an extension of the time spent within their home space. Many young people in our engagement said their preferred space would be at home. as opposed to many of the places that previous data would have shown they would have utilised. Similarly, extracurricular activity during that period. So, you know, for probably 2 years is a cohort of young people that have been impacted by these challenges. And there's also some work that's been developed with probably more targeted and more vulnerable young people who also have that confidence in re-engaging, and also from their parents, particularly those that may have been shielding during those periods. I think a lot of positives also came during that period in terms of picking up new challenges, new ways of working. I think the vulnerable programs supporting care experienced children, young people with safeguarding concerns is hardwired into our approaches these days. Children and young people with disabilities, new whole family approaches and links with siblings, also on bringing groups of people together into networks, home support for families, use of digital to access for family life, and also have on here things like the large-scale investments that came in from the Summer of Fun programs, which have been highly successful, and also in the middle of 2 years, the Winter of Wellbeing programme, where we were able to invest in third sector. I would highlight one of the key things for me. We were able to work with those young adults and youth groups, so the Bridgend Youth Matters networks, and those young people that were up to 17 years of age, and in some cases going beyond 24 years of age. So focusing on how place efficiency can contribute to community COVID recovery, and I guess also the cost of living pressures now as a one council approach is one of the challenges. Helping to secure it, you know, and longer term development and ownership of local opportunities. As I say, if it is for others to pick up, there needs to be a long-term vision for what that looks like, and stronger partnership engagement. There's a focus on the additional needs within the action plan, and recognising there is more that can be done in that respect, but some good work has taken place, and that's documented in the assessment and also the action plan. I think recognising that whilst we may look towards targeted approaches for specific groups of young people, the challenge is now more universal coming out of the pandemic, and I guess it's this rising tide will float all boats, that many more young people actually need help and support going forward, and opportunities. Also like to highlight that the council is showing some significant commitment and investment to improving play space, and I think that was given quite a strong airing at the scrutiny meeting in terms of how can space support the greatest use for the greatest number of children, young people and families, whilst being inclusive. But I think on a UK level, there's a challenge in how we approach accessibility, looking at the strategic role of locations, understanding the leap from accessible to inclusive and the different range of issues that are included within that, and then an understanding of play value and community engagement. And, you know, from my assessment, I'm pleased to see that there's some very strong commitment to working more and more in these ways. As we say, it's a long-term challenge to change historical provision. Potential for council to develop a more facilitatory and supportive role in some instances, as opposed to being seen as a delivery partner, to create local ownership, and also sweating, I suppose, our larger leisure and cultural partnerships to play a significant role within this challenge. I think the duty asks us to consider the barriers to engagement, so low cost, no cost opportunities where they can be delivered and developed, because place efficiency quite clearly has a foundation that connects to the socio-economic duty, and cost not being a barrier to people gaining that benefit. Some focus on workforce, but also, as I say, the need for this leadership group so that it is bought into and the contributions of the many can be seen both across the One Council approach, but also including relevant stakeholders and partners beyond that. And as I say, place efficiency, when you look through the report, for those that have done it, is including education, schools, planning, traffic and transport, early years, family policy, intergenerational and health and safety. It's quite broad brush, and the challenge is to connect that. So a place efficiency group would without doubt help to look at the performance and the progress, bring people together, but also include those external partners. We took, as we say, the report and the plan to overview and scrutiny 3, and it was a thorough airing, and it provided some great insight. We've received a number of points that we will respond to. One is on how to engage best with town and community councils, and to actually make that role or that partnership more productive, and also the timeliness of communications. There is something else around community use of school assets, specific examples looked at in terms of structured sport. But the challenge within place efficiency is to probably look more globally at how school assets can support community activity and opportunity. Some discussion in there on developing play-friendly streets. And I think one of the reasons for things like place efficiency is children playing out less, parents being less confident in letting children play out in streets, etc. So some discussion on how developing safe spaces close to home, simple thinking really, in appropriate places may be helpful. And there was also something around how we use signage, I think, around where we've had the no ball game signs in some areas, to actually convert that into more play priority zones and areas seen as important for the development of children and young people. I think there's a question on the One Council support, and essentially the response will highlight the 2022-23 corporate plan and the connections within there, where the One Council approach is to support communities and people to create their own solutions, encouraging developing capacity amongst the third sector, and working as that One Council to discourage different parts working in different and unnecessary ways. So the connection with the socio-economic duty is quite clearly shown, and this piece of legislation, the duty, is very much founded in anti-poverty issues, whilst recognising the broader inequality challenges. In terms of the well-being, future gen actions, long-term collaboration and involvement of people, those are the 3 that stand out, although all 5 have relevance. And in terms of financial implications, we're essentially working within the available budgets, and probably there needs to be a recognition that some of the external funding that has been quite large over the last 2 years is unlikely to be available for the coming year. So the recommendations to Cabinet in the report is to review the detail of this place efficiency duty and provide any comments or observations, and also to potentially approve the place efficiency assessment and action plan in line with the national requirements.
Thank you for that comprehensive report, Andrew, and huge thank you to you and colleagues for the work that has gone into this report. It's a hefty document, and it lists all of the actions, and there's many actions that have been undertaken, and there's a huge amount of detail on those actions, and I think that demonstrates the effort that's gone into this agenda. Councillor Good, please.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Andrew, again. As ever, a comprehensive review of where we are, and I'd like to more widely thank Claire, Andrew, and the rest of the team for all this work, because as the Leader notes, it's a big report. It's full of detail. It's extremely comprehensive, and I think it's very evident the amount of work that's been poured into it by the team. I think, as Andrew points out, this is such a great example of how the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act should work. And I think that's something we should all embrace. This report goes through in detail how the young people of our communities can co-create things with us, that it isn't just left to us to review what is needed and tell them what they want, but in fact, the future is all about us working with them to deliver the future they want to see. So I think it's a really positive report. I'm happy to move it. I'd also like to take a moment to thank members, elected members on the council who have made contributions to this. I know there were concerns raised, there were lots of questions asked in scrutiny and more widely of both myself and Councillor Spanswick. But I really think that as a result of that work, we have come to a better place that is actually doing a lot for the communities that they represent, as well as communities across the board. So I'd like to thank them for that. I also look forward to chairing the leadership group. I think it is a really positive way forward, and a really great way of bringing that co-creation and keeping that co-creation going as we move forward. As Andrew notes, this isn't a document that we sign off and disappears. It's something that needs to continue, and the work will continue to happen as the years go on. I think it's going to be a great opportunity for our young people to take part in that. And as the chair, I will happily invite as many young people from our community as possible, as well as our youth council and our youth mayor, who I think can be key in delivering some of the work on this. So I really look forward to that. Finally, I'd just like to thank our partners as well in this, Halo, Arwen, and others across our community. As Andrew noted as well, a lot of our young people have said to us through this work and other pieces of work, and I know some of the work that Halo and Arwen have done has reflected this as well, that many young people have faced challenges as a result of COVID. Many of our young people have essentially lost 2 years of social development in those key areas of life where you learn to work with other people and be around other people. And it's really encouraging to see the consideration that's gone into that and how we work with partners to build back what they've lost. And I think that is something we should all celebrate and work towards. Finally, I think it is also important to look at those spaces that have historically been a no play area, and how that needs to change to meet modern needs. As Andrew notes, we have been very lucky with funding from Welsh Government in terms of things like Summer of Fun and other programmes that sought to bring our young people back into community play environments. But whether that continues going forward, I think is up for debate. So this is something we need to look at more generally across our community, of how do we encourage those young people to get out into their communities and be confident enough to play, but also be in a situation where we take our older community members with us and see the value of having the ability of our young people to go out there and play. So I think it is a really positive report. It's very comprehensive, and I hope that the rest of Cabinet will share my enthusiasm for it and second my recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you for that, Councillor Good, and the effort and leadership you have shown on this agenda as well, alongside Councillor Spanswick. I know is particularly passionate about outdoor play, and I'll ask him to come in now. Thank you, Councillor Spanswick.
Thank you, Leader. And just the formal things, I'd like to second Councillor Rees-Good with the proposal and the recommendation before us today, and thank everybody, all officers across all directorates, for the work being input. Because again, this is a one council document, a one council approach. A special thanks to our police efficiency champion, Andrew Thomas, because he is doing a marvellous job, and you know, long may that continue. And this is such a wide area, police efficiency, but clearly I'd like to focus down a bit onto the fixed play equipment or play areas, which we've got a commitment to invest in. But it's not just about fixed play equipment. There's play spaces we should value and can and do value, but need to get used more. You don't need equipment to have a good time playing out there. And that was a common thing many years ago when I was a young lad, not that long ago. But now we have to have lots of equipment to enjoy, so which is great, but there's also nice play spaces, many of them out there in our green open space. But the one area on fixed play equipment. We've committed to invest in refurbishing of play areas, and we have done some great work to date. There's 9 players being completed, and of those 9, there is already accessible, disabled accessible equipment, roundabouts, seats, swings within those play areas. A lot more to do, but we've started the process, and several weeks ago I met with Newburyfields with local board members and officers, and we committed to make sure that going forward all players will, where possible, make sure they take account of access audits, accessibility, disability, inclusivity, and to that end we are looking to procure specialist advice to make sure we get it right, because Newburyfields will be what's classed as a premier play area, but we can learn then, take that experience to all the other players to follow, and where possible everyone will make sure that it has suitable, where appropriate, equipment for disabilities and abilities, and quiet spaces as well, quiet areas. Lots of work we're taking into account. And on the action plan, this is something I think perhaps we as members need training. The action plan on page 450 identifies the need for training on play value, accessibility, and focus on play-based development. And some great stuff there, talking about play value sport from Play Wales, the training awareness sessions. But I'm not clear, it sounds that the way that's written, that's more for officers, and great, that's great. But I think as members, we all need that training as well to understand the whole gambit of play in its broader sense, not just play areas, but to take this, it's a massive report, but there's a clear need, I think, for all members to have a better understanding. And I think if we can build into this action plan some training for members from Play Wales or whoever at the appropriate time, that can only improve everybody's understanding, and a better provision we'll have for the public in the long term. And I do hope as well that it's already taken place in the past. We make sure we bring town and community councils on board, and they become part of the going forward with whether that's investing or just understanding the needs of play in our communities. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you for that, Councillor Spandrick. And you're right to highlight this isn't just about our children's play areas, important though they are, and I think we're all very enthusiastic and keen that we continue our work around refurbishing our children's play areas. It's also about indoor play as well. So I was particularly proud at the recent opening of the new indoor soft play area for the youngest children at Maesteg Sports Centre, which complements the provision at Bridgend Life Centre, which has happened in over recent years, and I know that's important for our youngest children, isn't it, Claire, in terms of their sensory and physical development, and we know that unfortunately the pandemic led to a series of lockdowns and restrictions that did limit some of those play opportunities, and so we do need to renew and build on the participation in play, and this report I think is I know it's our map, it's our way forward in achieving that, and I certainly welcome the work of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I know there was some helpful contributions from the committee, and perhaps they will want to revisit that in the future, because as Councillor Good has identified, this will be a dynamic plan, because there will be opportunities we hope that we may not know about now, of funding opportunities from Welsh Government, that we've been very successful in securing those funding opportunities in recent years. We would look to do that again in the future, and play changes as well, doesn't it? And the options and the way that children play is changing, and we want to reflect that going forward. So the recommendation's been moved and seconded. Is everyone in agreement with those recommendations, please? Thank you, colleagues. Thank you very much to Claire and Andrew. And the next report we have is the second report, the Corporate Director for Social Services and Wellbeing, and it's on our proposals for accommodating unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. Claire, please.
Thank you very much, Leader, and very pleased to present this report to Cabinet this afternoon, which is, as you said, is an update in terms of us meeting our statutory duties in respect of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. And we talked in an earlier agenda item about protecting the most vulnerable, and these children and young people really are the most vulnerable of the vulnerable in our society and our communities. So the purpose of this report is to provide an update to Cabinet on the mandated National Transfer Scheme for unaccompanied asylum-seeking children and young people, to request permission to delegate authority to myself as Corporate Director for Social Services and Wellbeing to modify a current contract in accordance with contract procedure rules, and to delegate authority to myself in consultation with the Chief Officer, Finance, Performance and Change, and the Section 151 Officer and Chief Officer, Legal and Regulatory Services, HR and Corporate Policy, to agree the terms of the Regional Service Level Agreement for any ancillary agreements as required. So the background to this report is clearly the number of children and young people who are entering the United Kingdom as unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. There has been a national transfer scheme for a number of years, where when children come into the country, often into Kent and that area of England, that on a voluntary basis they had been accommodated and supported by different authorities across the whole of the United Kingdom. The earlier, going into last year, steps were taken to mandate local authorities and indeed regions across the United Kingdom to take an increased number of children, recognising the scale of the vulnerabilities and the impact on authorities into which those children are entering the UK. So, as you can see under 3 of the report, this means a considerable increase in the number of children for whom we will be responsible, both in Bridgend and working in partnership with Rhondda Cynon Taf and Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Councils in the Cwmtaf Maganac region. And that increase for us in Bridgend is up from 6 to 29, and for our region up to 91. As you can see under 3.5, to date we have successfully placed and are responsible for 6 children. Cabinet will also be very aware that there are significant issues in Bridgend and indeed across Wales and the rest of the UK with placement sufficiency. The market stability report, which was presented to Council back in July last year, set out significant gaps across a range of regulated services, but in children's social care it highlighted the need to develop more residential care provision. We talked earlier about the Bryn Melyn Hub as part of the Capital report, which is a key element of that, and the need to recruit more foster carers. So there's a need to meet this responsibility to develop more services, and as you can see, the current proposal is to develop more supported accommodation. Supported accommodation is suitable for young people who are over the age of 16. It's not a regulated care setting. It's provided by a registered social landlord in terms of the accommodation, and then the support is provided by a commissioned support provider, in this instance by Dowis. And as you can see within the report, there would be a need, if Cabinet were minded to approve this report this afternoon, to modify that contract with Dowis in accordance with contract procedure rules, because it would increase the value of the contract by I think it was 36%, it says within the report, in order to meet the support needs of the additional numbers of young people coming into Bridgend. But it would be a very effective and dare I say cost-effective way of meeting the needs of those children. The location would be quite suitable for accessing local services, including education provision within the county borough. Obviously, we wouldn't know the exact needs until the young people came to live here with us in Bridgend, and I'm sure it would be very welcomed by our communities. In addition to that request, which would meet the needs of a small number of young people, there's a request to work regionally to meet those wider responsibilities for the 91 children and young people who we may become responsible for as a region under the National Transfer Scheme, and that we would need to be undertaking work to develop provision sufficient to meet that need with our partners in RCT and Merthyr, and that we would need to develop an appropriate service level agreement in order to do that as set out in 4.9 of the report. Just take you to section 8 of the report, financial implications. I am pleased to say that there has been a change from the Home Office in terms of the financial the finance which is attached to unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, and we are confident that there is sufficient within the money which is coming forward from the Home Office to meet the need for the supported accommodation, which is a key recommendation of this report. And so I take you to 9.1 of the recommendations, Leader, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Claire. So first of all, bring in the Deputy Leader, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. Considering Wales is a nation of sanctuary, I'm quite pleased to see this report here. I'm really pleased to note that Westminster are going to be paying all the costs. I know some of the costs around the uncertainty of the care and support plans because we don't actually know who these young people are until they get to us. So I appreciate that they will remain uncertain until that point. You've already, I suppose, convinced us, is what I want to say, Claire, that the monies that we will receive will cover any costs. Are we assured that the young people can be placed by the 28th of February with providers? And the only other question I have is in relation to education, which I will pass over to Lindsay because I'd like to know around their education arrangements as well. But I'm more than happy to move the report, Leader. Thank you. Thank
you for that, Deputy Leader. Claire, please.
Yeah, just briefly, yes, we are assured, and that was, Deputy Leader, the reason to bring this report today, to make sure that we had the requisite permissions in order to fulfil that responsibility by the end of February.
Thank you, Claire. I know Councillor Blundell wants to come in. Is this on education, in which case the Corporate Director for Education who can respond to your point and to the Deputy Leader's point at the same time. Councillor Blundell, please.
Yes, it is on education. Thank you. It was along the same lines as Councillor Gebby's question about what provisos are we putting in place, provision we're putting in place for these children, and is there any special categorisation for these children where there isn't with Ukrainian nationals when they come? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blundell. Lindsay, please.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Deputy Leader. Thank you, Councillor Blundell. As accompanied children, they'd be identified as looked after children. So as a looked after child, they're obviously prioritised under our school admissions policy. They'd also be considered eligible for home to school transport in line with the Learn and Travel Wales measure, and they'd also be eligible for free school meals. In addition to that, as far as wider education support is concerned, they'd have additional support through our inclusion service with regard to English as an additional language.
Thank you for that, Lindsay. Councillor Blundell, did you want to come back in?
Yeah, just to ask the Director if those costs as well will be covered by UK government, or would those costs we have to find in our own budget?
Lindsay, please.
Thanks, Councillor Blundell. Thanks, Leader. I can't confirm that yet. I need to check that with finance colleagues.
Well, I think our expectation is that it comes out of the UK government funding, and if we weren't going to take it before now, we are going to take it after now, because that's where it's coming from. Okay, thanks, colleagues. I'm sure we'll confirm the legality around that. I'm not suggesting that that we take any money that we're not entitled to, but our understanding is that this is a payment to cover, all the costs to support these children, and as the Director has highlighted, they are some of the most vulnerable children in our society, and we will provide the warmest of welcomes to them in Bridgend County Borough. They will be fleeing horror and terror that none of us, thankfully, will have to experience, and and imagine, and it is our duty to make them as welcome as we can and provide all the support that we need. I wanted to say as well that we have met with and briefed the local members, Councillor Freya Bledsoe and Councillor Ian Williams. They were, I can confirm, very supportive, and we thank them for their support, and we will work closely with the community as the proposal is further developed. Claire, did you want to come back in, please?
No, Leader. I think I just draw attention on the finance position to 8.6 in terms of the setup costs, housing management costs. I think to follow up on Lindsay's answer, I think we just need to work through the detail in terms of the wider implications. You picked up the matter of social work assessments, education, etc. Because the more children we support, the more it impacts, doesn't it, on local support services.
And the principle is a key principle here, that we are effectively being instructed to take these children. We've been instructed to do that, and therefore the cost should be fully funded. It is, of course, the responsibility of the UK government to make a provision for refugees. So we expect all costs to be fully funded by the UK government. Okay, the recommendation has been, our recommendations have been moved and seconded. Do I have agreement with those recommendations, please? Okay, thank you, colleagues, and we'll report back on the cost of education. So the next report that we have, thank you for that, Claire, is a report of the monitoring officer. It is not a report of the monitoring officer. I am getting ahead of myself. Apologies. It is indeed a report of the Corporate Director for Education and Family Support, and it's on the appointment of local authority governors. So over to you, please, Lindsay.
Thanks, Leader. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for Cabinet for the appointment of local authority governors to the school governing bodies listed at paragraph 4.1 of the report. In accordance with Council guidance, officers have considered applications received for current vacancies for local authority governor positions on school governing bodies, and for the 3 current local authority governor vacancies of the 3 schools in the table indicated in the report. All applicants met the approved criteria for appointment as a local authority governor, and there was no competition for any of these vacancies. Therefore, Leader, I take you to the recommendations of paragraph 9.
Thank you, Lindsay. Councillor Blundell, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. First of all, I'd like to move the report. And then secondly, I'd like to thank those people who put their names forward today, especially Mr. Kevin Pascoe, who's going to go back as the head of the governors at Archbishop McGrath. I think he did a great job there when we met him around there, and I'm sure Councillor Ross Pennell-Thomas will do a great job on Ysgol Gyfyng Gymraeg Llangynnoed, and Samson at Cairo Primary as well. So congratulations to you all for joining that. I would also make my monthly plea that I see many members in this meeting today, and there are who represent wards where there are schools with vacancies on your governing bodies. Please feel free to apply. It's a very important part of the education process of the governing bodies, and also gives you a better understanding of education in the county borough. Thank you, Chair.
You, Councillor Blundell, and I'm not sure it's a demotion or a promotion, but he's going to be a chair of governors. Head.
I meant chair. In my head, I said chair.
Thank you, Councillor Blundell. Recommendation has been moved, and do I have a second there?
Second that,
Councillor Spanzik, thank you for that. All in agreement. Thank you, colleagues. Now we will receive the report of the monitoring officer on unreasonable behaviour and the vexatious complaints policy. Kelly, please.
Thank you, Leader. The purpose of this report today is to present to Cabinet the revised unreasonable behaviour of vexatious complaint policy for approval. Most of the contact the authorities, officers and members have with members of the public is positive. However, in a small minority of cases, the contact is not positive, and customers, in this case the public, pursue their request for a service or complain in a way that is unreasonable. This can have a negative impact on the way the complaint is handled and on the authority's ability to provide services to other customers. Having a policy in place to deal with unreasonable customer helps officers to understand clearly what is expected with them, and also helps manage the expectations of the public and explain that certain behaviours will not be tolerated. Cabinet approved an unreasonable behaviour and vexatious complaints policy in January 2019. However, unreasonable behaviour towards representatives of the Council is not limited to complaints and can arise more generally from service interaction with the public, which is what we've seen more lately. The policy attached at Appendix 1 has been revised to recognise that whilst the Council will continue to respond openly and transparently to complaints, it has a clear set of values and will not tolerate unreasonable or abusive behaviours towards its staff, elected members or any third party. The policy gives examples of what this behaviour might be, the actions the Council may take to address it, and the process through which a complainant can challenge this decision. As I've stated, almost all complaints are reasonable, but there are a small number where behaviour has become unreasonable and it takes a disproportionate amount of officer time to manage the contact with them. In the last 12 months, 3 complainants have been deemed as vexatious, which represents 0.9% of all corporate complaints received. One of these complainants over a 3-month period called the Council in excess of 2,500 times. The issues they raised have all been responded to previously, but they persisted in contacting the Council and presented as threatening to officers dealing with them. As you can imagine, this takes up a considerable amount of officer and member time and doesn't result in any improvement to services. Therefore, members, I'd ask you to approve the amendments to the revised policy. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you for that, Kelly. Councillor Good, please.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Kelly, for the report. Just very briefly from me, I think this report is very clear about it's not about preventing anyone from our borough from raising concerns they have, and we know that often when people do come to us, they feel upset or they are very concerned about certain issues, and they absolutely have every right to get in touch with us, and we'll do everything we can to help them. This is about that very, very small number of complaints that go over the line and start to impact on the well-being and health of our officers and our members. As the report reflects, that's less than 1% of all of the people that get in touch through our complaints procedure at BCBC. But, I think we have a duty as a cabinet, as an authority, to make sure that everyone in our workforce are kept safe and are having a work life that is not impacted by vexatious complaints. I had the pleasure last week of spending some time with our customer service colleagues on the front desk, and as a team that often bears the brunt of some of the challenging behaviour we sometimes face. They do an amazing job. They provide an amazing service. They give access to people every day to the over 800 services that the council provides, and they have the right to work feeling safe and happy. So I with pleasure would move this report, and I hope cabinet colleagues will follow my lead on that.
Thank you, Councillor Good, and Deputy is next, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. I'm quite happy to second the report. It's pleasing to see that we're taking measures to protect not just our staff, but all our members of the authority. I think it's interesting to note that we need to do this. I don't think in all my years of working in local government and health board, it's only just recently that these sorts of policies have had to come in. I think it's quite right and proper. You should not be subjected to any abuse or vexatious complaints just because you work for a public service, and I'm quite happy to second this. Thanks, Leader.
Thank you for that, Deputy Leader, and I'm sure all cabinet members, I'm sure all members of the authority from across the chamber would support this policy. It is not acceptable. It is not acceptable to treat staff who are were simply trying to do their job in the way that we have seen in recent years. And whilst, of course, we will try and respond to each and every complaint we receive, there is a limit, and when that limit is reached, and when that behaviour becomes completely unreasonable, then we will respond to that. And if necessary, and depending on the behaviour, we will of course contact South Wales Police, because we will not tolerate abuse of our staff. We will not tolerate violence towards our staff, and we will contact the police when that action is required. The recommendation has been moved and seconded. Is everyone in agreement, please? Yep. Thank you, colleagues. So the next report we have from the monitoring officer is on information reports for noting. Kelly, please.
Thank you, Leader. This report is to inform Cabinet members of any information reports that have been published since your last scheduled meeting. At paragraph 4.1, you can see that one report has been published, and that relates to the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000. The report and the policy is attached in your pack. This does fall under my remit, so I just want to confirm that the RIPA policy has been reviewed and is considered fit for purpose for the next period. As you know, Bridgend use RIPA sparingly, and in fact we haven't made any authorisation since April 2014. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you for that, Kelly. So recommendation is there. Do I have a mover that we note that report? Councillor Good.
Happy to move, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Blundell. Is everyone in agreement? We note the report. Thank you, colleagues. The next item on the agenda is to consider any urgent items that I have been asked to consider, and there have not been any urgent reports that I have been asked to place in front of you, and therefore we'll move on to item 16, which is a proposal to exclude the public, and the monitoring officer will take us through that process, please. Kelly.
Thank you, Leader. In your meeting of December 2022, you considered this item, and at that time you determined to exclude the public for reasons of confidentiality. I'm not aware there's been any change in that position since December, so I'd ask you to apply that test, and my advice would be that that exemption still applies.
I certainly share that view, and I'm looking to see if other colleagues,
Leader,
Councillor Spanzik, moves to
exclude the public
as well.
item 16.
Is everyone in agreement? I can see that all members are in agreement, and therefore we will formally exclude members of the public from the meeting, and we will just have a